Today on the Reading Magazine podcast, we have Jobany Bedoya.
Hey.
He is an entrepreneur, founder of the Wednesday Diversity Mixers that have been held for, 8 years now in Reading?
Yeah, May.
In the greater Reading area, and also has a DJing business as well.
Yep.
More about him after we talk a little bit about our sponsors. Kids Peace Foster Care and Community Programs in Reading offer foster care and child care for all ages in Reading. Visit fostercare.com/Reading. The Kutztown Folk Festival is hosting a job fair April 9th at 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Hampton Inn and Suites in Kutztown. Visit kutztownfestival.com/employment if you're interested in working with them for their event this summer. And also, if you're looking for a personal injury lawyer, talk to our friend Ken Millman. He's located in Wyomissing, offers free consultations, and has 20 years experience. You can call 484-869-2113. Jobany.
Awesome. Jason.
How's it going?
Great, man. I'm excited to be here. It's been watching what you're doing, and it's awesome to see you grow.
Oh, thanks.
So here we are.
Yeah, so tell me, who is Jobany?
Man, so I don't think there's enough time in a day to explain everything, but
Well, give us the
short version is hey, I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
Who
I think that explains.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty accurate description. I started my first business when I was 20.
Okay.
Actually, I had a barber shop back in the day. Fast forward 20 years later, back then I didn't know how to run a business. So that's kind of what led me down this path. I graduated high school, son of immigrant parents. School wasn't something we talked about like after high school. I didn't see myself wanting to go to college.
Okay.
And then when I attempted it, it just didn't work out. I didn't have access to resources. I didn't know what financial aid was, all that, the typical unfortunate immigrant story where my parents didn't know any better. My mom had a 3rd grade education. My dad had 8th grade education level. So they were very limited. My mom helped. My mom was the oldest of all of the kids. So she raised 13 other kids. So it's like, it's a different dynamic. It's a different world. So here in the U.S., obviously, things are a little different when you're growing up. In high school, you start talking about college and future plans versus where, they're coming from. It's basically survival. What are we going to do to get our next, meal kind of thing? So I actually wasn't sure what to do. So I ended up visiting a Vote Tech in high school because I was tired of high school and I didn't want to go either. Again, just unguided, unfortunately. That's just the situation I was in. But I always had hobbies during my childhood. One of them was cutting hair. So I picked up clippers because where I grew up and most places that are like inner city environments, you do things that are like that. Like you go to barber shops.
Where'd you grow up again?
In North Jersey, in West New York, New Jersey. West New York, New Jersey, which is, I know it throws people off, but it's literally on the other side of the Lincoln Tunnel there, along the river. Okay. So we're right along the cliffs there. But yeah, so like I picked it up. I was just messing around with it. Did it with my dad, my brother. They were kind of like my guinea pigs. Learned how to cut hair on my own. And then I just did it throughout high school as one of my side hustles.
Okay.
And the other thing I've always done was DJing. So I always loved music and just enjoyed everything about it. So, at like 13, 14, I DJ'd our school dance and like I was cutting hair on the side for like $5 because we didn't have, I didn't have those things that people wanted or had or the cool sneakers or the clothing and fitting in. So I had to work for it, right? So I worked at a pizza shop twice a week for a couple of bucks just to clean it. And then I would cut hair every once in a while and occasionally do a party. Okay. So did that growing up. And then when I got into high school, when we moved to Pennsylvania, which was an entire culture shock, my family decided to shift gears. Things weren't looking too good out there. Life was expensive, dangerous. It was unpredictable almost. And I was the oldest of three. And at that point, I started high school out there. And I'm like, Mom, Dad, this is probably not the best place for my brother and sister. At 14 years old, already thinking that way. But you grow up quick in that environment. So we ended up moving out here because we have some family friends. My mom has a childhood friend and someone she worked with back in Colombia, South America. And we linked up, and we'd always visit New Holland and Lancaster County with in the summertime.
Okay.
And Berks, we'd come to the outlets back then. I mean, if you guys remember that. So we'd visit. We loved it. We thought it was so peaceful. Obviously, the cost of living was very different. I mean, you pull up to your place, you actually have a parking spot or a driveway, which is just not normal. Just little things like that. And, it was safe, right? And but little did I know. I mean, it was not that it wasn't safe, but it was just a major culture shock. It was very hard on me. It took a toll. I didn't know what racism was until I moved to New Holland. And until I went to Garden Spot, where I went from a high school where there were very few white people to then being in a school where I was one of like 10 minorities in the entire high school. And some of them were already kids that were adopted by like Mennonite families. Okay. So they grew up not even knowing the culture they came from. So that was difficult. So that was a tough process, but it taught me how to learn and how to accept and understand what real cultural diversity and inclusion was by seeing the other side of it, right? Because I was one side until I was 14, 15, and then came to the other side where, like, I'm the minority. And I didn't even know what it was to be a minority. So, so that's kind of what started building this character, I would say. And then that's when I graduated high school because I went to Votech and I actually went to check out the electronics program because I was into like hands-on electronics. And I happened to see a cosmetology class and the teacher's like, I was like, hey, do you guys offer barber school? And they're like, no, we don't do that. That's just not a thing. We just do cosmetology. And then when I got into a conversation with her, she explained all the benefits of getting a cosmetology license as a barber because you, at that time, because they don't do this anymore, but the state required you, if you had a barber shop, you would have to then go to school for an additional 200 hours to get a manager's license. Oh, okay. So then you'd have to have that in order to run a shop if you wanted employees. Oh. And that was the idea. I wanted to open a shop. I wanted to have people working and just, a cool environment. So I decided to go and do it. And I actually went to cosmetology school, which a lot of people don't know that. It's a little secret about me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I got my actual license in cosmetology. And then I opened, it technically wasn't a barber shop because you couldn't label it a barber shop, but it was a barber shop, right? So the first minority-owned business in New Holland on Main Street 20 years ago. That was exciting, but I also didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea how to run a business. I just knew how to do the skill. I knew how to cut hair. And at that time, business was booming because I was the only bilingual barber outside of the city of Lancaster. Okay, yeah. So like Ephrata, New Holland, I'd get people from Leola, like all these outskirts and outside of Berks as well, like Shillington and some of these other areas. So people would come down and see me, and I'd always be busy. And I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't managing right. I didn't have a great financial understanding of how to run a business properly. When I went to access resources, some of them were like, you're 20. What are you going to do? How are you going to run a business? Why are you going to open a shop? Like, you don't know what you're doing. So it was unfortunate because I didn't have many resources. But then, learned the hard way. And now as I mentor and consult for other businesses, I advise not to get into loans right away to start a business. Don't start with a credit card. That's what I did. I put about almost 10 grand into a credit card with renovations and equipment. And next thing you know, at 24% interest, you can imagine how the rest goes, right? So I found myself maybe about a year or two in, and I was already like choking in debt because of the credit cards. And of course I had to make a living and it was tough. So I started working a night shift job, So I started pulling way too. I was burning on both ends, right? So I was working during the day, and then I would work night shift. Actually, at a rehab, I was working as a translator, intake person, house manager is what they called them back then. So that's kind of what got me into this like mode of, well, I didn't know how to run a business. Let me get into something where I could learn how to manage a business. So I got into retail management, and I worked in some retail stores and Target, and I was like team lead there, and started just kind of watching, and I analyzed what everyone did and how they ran their business. And I actually at Target, I was recruited to get into banking. Yeah, and again, I never would have thought any of this. Yeah, so I was there, and someone was like, "Hey, you're great with people. You should come work at this bank. They're hiring." Actually, what it was a PNC bank that was inside of a supermarket.
Okay, yeah. Right.
And then their focus was mainly to just solicit the customers that were there and talk to them about opening accounts and selling, loans and things like that. So I got into that and did really well and worked my way up. And then, went through a bunch of different banks, because at that time was when there was a lot of buyouts and acquisitions of banking, that whole mess. So I had to live through that, of course, and was fortunate enough that I was able to work my way up to eventually when I got into management at a bank. And here I am, this kid with no college education, now as part of a management team for a major bank. It was one of the biggest banks around.
And what age
still
is
is. I was 26, 27 maybe.
Okay, so not.
Yeah, it was a few years of working and all that. And that's how eventually I got into the whole banking thing. And then did pretty well there. Ran a pretty busy branch in Lancaster. And then all of a sudden, this opportunity popped up to get out of retail banking, because I hated it at the time. It was during some very unfortunate times that now the institution has paid the price for. But I just was not happy with some of the ethics and some of the practices. That are very publicly known now. If you just do a little research, you'll find out who it is. But I saw an opportunity to come down here to Reading, to downtown, and work in the home equity department. So that was an opportunity for me to expand my resume, because my goal was always to build a strong resume and just work my way up. And that's what I did. And then eventually I got the retail side pretty locked down. So I wanted to try the back office stuff. So I actually went into home equity loan underwriting. Little did I know it was just not for me. Underwriting takes a different type of personality, and
for those who don't know,
get
into that a little bit.
Yeah, so underwriting, you're basically the decision maker on a loan.
Okay.
So Jason is at the store, at the branch, or out there. He sells the loan to the client. You then send me all the paperwork and info, and I'm just crunching numbers and getting data, and it was just you're glued to your desk. There's no interaction. And
exciting.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And I didn't know this at the time, because since then I've taken self-assessments. I've had some leadership courses, and I've been able to understand why I was miserable there, because I was miserable. I hated it. But what I did do during those times is I started to get to know the community of Reading, of Berks. And, it started with an old friend that he was like, "Hey, my manager and I, we run this Latin night happy hour thing at what used to be the Crown Plaza." And you should come over here. It's a great networking opportunity. You could talk to people. You can meet our manager. Well, it turns out that manager was Craig Poole, and I know everyone knows him, so that's why I'm throwing that name out there. And the friend was Daniel, so from Barrio Alegría, and I'm sure people recognize him too. And then there was another person that was influential on my networking and connections, which was Margarita Caicedo. At the time, she was working for RAC. She's a local Colombian leader, which, we're Colombian, South America, and we're minorities within minorities, because Reading is mostly Puerto Rican, Dominican. And that's what some people just kind of think of when they see minority or hear Latino, that it's just like Mexican, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. But there's a bunch of other South American countries that are not very represented. So she was part of that. And then as I got to know Craig and I got to know Danielle and I got to know some other people, I'm like, hey, I have this idea of hosting a Colombian Independence Festival, because I had always been involved in that in Lancaster County.
Okay.
But I saw that Berks had a lot of Colombians and had a lot of support from different organizations, and I saw a lot of community-driven groups. So that's when it started. And then I also saw a different need. I noticed there were lots of Latinos in Reading. I'm like, wait a minute. This is like a majority Latino city, but yet there is no representation of Latinos in anything. And I had a problem with that. It was very very little here and there that were involved in our community, right? So I saw a need. I'm like, wait, where are all these business owners gathering? Where are they talking? Where are they talking shop, getting to know each other, exchanging business? And I did not see that. There was some networking for Latino businesses before I had come to Reading, but that had stopped. It fizzled out because it's hard. You know, you have to stay consistent, and that's something I noticed many people just were not consistent, and we're selfish, and we're looking to fill egos, and that to me is what deters the mission, right, of trying to just unite and connect. So I'm like, hey, let's try this. I talked to Jobanys, Mi Casa, Su Casa. Lots of familiar names, because all these people were very important in the foundation of what I've been able to build in Berks County. I said, Jobanys, I want to try a networking event. Can we use your restaurant? And she was like, yeah, let's do it. So I went in because I had an influence in Lancaster County that did networking events. So shout out to Norman. People might know him as well. Locally in Lancaster, did networking events, successful, lots of people, lots of great connections. So that motivated me to try it here. And I said, Norman, let's try this in Reading. He wasn't at the time into this market because he wasn't super familiar with it. So he's like, go ahead, you do your thing out there. I'll do it in Lancaster. And then that's the rest is history. We had a networking event at Mi Casa, Su Casa.
And that was 8 years ago.
And that was 8 years ago in May,
Wow.
which is insane.
Oh, in May. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
May will be May 5th, I think, was the actual anniversary of it. But yeah, it would have been, it's 8 years ago. And we had maybe 10 people show up. Maybe 15. I mean, it wasn't a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the folks that went that day still continue to support, which is great, and I love them for that. But I was like, man, this is tough. I don't think anybody's gonna come to this. This might be a waste of my time, because you know, at the time there was no one paying for it. I was coughing it up. I was like, hey, would you mind hosting a networking event? And, you know, can you provide the appetizers and drinks? And, you know, and I'll just try and get people here. But then fast forward, you know, now we average over 100 people per event. You know, some are a little less, but some are a lot more. So it all depends on the type of event we do. But the idea of the mixers, of the diversity mixers, was to connect local community folks, entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs, big corporate, little guy business type thing, and get everyone together. And let's just talk shop. Let's connect. Let's build on this. And I actually think about 7 years ago, that's when I met a gentleman who had this idea of a magazine called, I think it was about six or seven. Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah. But I remember, you know, you coming down. By the way, Jason is the guy that I'm talking about. So this dude's been part of this group for many years, from almost the beginning, and just love how you have grown your business.
Oh, thanks.
And that was the ultimate goal, to see people like yourself and people like many others that are out there grow and succeed and expand and create jobs and create some economic development and economic movement in Berks and Reading. And that's what the focus of this group is to really
just about to ask you.
Yeah, and that's what we focus on. We always do this networking group at a different location. It's always at a different small business, usually small business, but we outgrew the small business. So we've tried it, and like I remember we had a local multi-service organization here Colombo Americano, and shout to Elizabeth. She's also a very big supporter. We had it in her office space, and oh my goodness, it was so packed. We had to have people outside.
Yeah, I know there's been quite a few.
Yeah, there's some where we just
and
end up being outside. So the party goes to the sidewalk and the hallways, everywhere, and I love it. And there's never really an agenda. People didn't even know, by the way, that I do have a side business, another DJ business. Many people didn't even know that. So just recently, when I started finally putting it out there, because I never wanted to make it about me. I never wanted it to be selfish about it. I've seen many other networking groups and just organizations that make it about that person, and it becomes a selfish like agenda. And never did I want it to be that way. I wanted it to be about everyone else.
Well, what I've seen you do a little bit different than, I guess, other networking groups, although there's not tons to compare with either. But you really focused on more, not the education side, but really showing people kind of how to go through a networking event. I know yours, it wasn't just put everyone in a room and you know, hey, because everyone groups in people they know and everything.
That's exactly it.
You'd break people out and basically say, reach out to people who don't know. You know, give them a pitch. You know, how can you? One things I remember, you know, always was, you know, you reminding people that, you know, what value can you give them first? Don't just tell them about your sales pitch, your elevator pitch, and say, here's what I do. You know, are you interested? How can you help them first? And you know, and that's different than
it is.
And
very.
So you brought a different perspective to that I don't think in other networking groups it was just mostly kind of like, hey, we're doing networking. Everyone's in a room.
Let's talk
together.
business. What can we do for each other?
Right.
That's it.
And that was
it.
You know.
No, we definitely this. So I use my culture as well, and that's another thing that when I got into the Anglo world, which is the corporate world, unfortunately, it's just there's not many people like me. So I didn't have many mentors or supporters in my field growing into the banking or whatever else I've been doing, because I'm usually the only one. So I put myself in that situation and think about it as, okay, what if I'm just some dude out here, or female, or business owner, or community leader, and I want to get to know some people, but I don't know how to network. I don't know anything about that. I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to talk to strangers. So what would I do in that situation, or how can someone help me? And that's what I think about when someone comes in. I always find out if they're new, then I give them a little highlight and give them a little shout out so people know they're new. So veterans like yourselves know right away, like, okay, that's not just only fresh meat, because that's what some people do in networking events, right? They only look for the new people because they want to do the sales pitch and then I'm out. But it's about building relationships. So I could tell you that over the 2,500 people that are within our network, just from this group, I've shook their hands. We've had lunch, coffee. We've met. We've worked on projects together. We've done things that are building relationships. Sometimes I don't even know what that person does or sells, and they vice versa. They might not even know what I'm doing, because we're just building relationships. And that's what's very important about this business, and the influence that some of these other cultures bring to the table, right? Traditionally, Americans, they get, you know, if you're from here, you show up, we talk business, and we're done, right? Like if we schedule lunch from 12 to 1, at 1 o'clock, that they're out the door and they have business done and it's over with. With us, you know, sometimes it's a matter of, we talk for 45 minutes and then like, oh yeah, we got to talk about a project, or oh yeah, we got to talk about whatever it is, because we want to build that. We want to trust each other, because that's another piece. You know, people like me sometimes have been let down by institutions, by organizations that maybe promise certain things, politicians. I mean, it's a typical story. So we get let down all the time. So now we have a trust issue. And then people wonder why. So when they ask, so a lot of people come to me and say, hey, Jobany, how do we get into the Latino world? We run this corporation, or we run this business, or we have this organization that does these great things for people like you, but they don't come. So my first question is always like, well, have you built a relationship with anyone? Or what are you doing to engage the community? It's not just like, here's the shiny spoon, here you go. It's let's build that. So I think that's the perspective we offer that is very unique. And there are many, many other networking groups now because they've, sprouted in the last couple of years. And I brag about it because there's nothing like the diversity mixer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 60-70% of the crowd are minority business owners who probably don't get the chance to network with larger corporations or different groups. And it's just a mix of everything. So we love it. I love it doing it once a month. It's not consistent now since the whole pandemic thing because it's been tough.
Oh, right,
yeah. Trying to get everyone together. We finally had one. We kicked one off in December. Right? Yeah, just not consistently yet. We're working on that because the other thing that I always had was, this was always a side thing that I did. I still had my day job, so like I still had to do my job.
Zoom. I guess there wasn't really any Zoom.
Nah, Zoom wasn't popular or any of that. Yeah. So yes, but now it's completely. Yeah, I know we're zoomed out. We're Zoom fatigue, man. But so we're always looking for hosts. Obviously there's a fee for it, but there's a ton of value. If you're a business and you're looking for marketing, this is the opportunity to do it. Obviously putting your stuff out there in the magazine or in whatever Jason's publishing, but there are other ways to connect, right? So I always tell people, you're probably going to have an audience of about 100 people. Most of them most likely haven't been to your business. You access the registration and check-in list. So now you've literally purchased yourselves warm leads because people pay thousands of dollars for a list of 10 hot leads or a list of leads, and you're exposing the business, right? So it's a great marketing opportunity for a pretty good price compared to some other marketing strategies. And I'm surprised by how much people don't take advantage of it, because now, I mean, we're reaching with email and social media well over 3,000 people. I said earlier 2,500. That's the amount of people that have been physically at an estimate in our events, right? Because you average about 100 per event. We've had an event every month for 6 years until the pandemic, and then a few after. And you do the numbers, crunch them, you'll see. And I have the registrations because that's the one thing I learned early on is take the list and make sure people register, and that way who's coming and how to engage them. When I put an email out there for the group, it's read. It's like triple the amount of the average open rate. So like people are opening this stuff. People are reading it. People are following the clicks or clicking and following links. So it's powerful, and I provide resources. Just like you said, the approach to the networking group was a little bit of a education process. I like to put stuff out there. Sometimes I'll put an article on something regarding small business or community. And I don't bombard people's emails, so they'll literally get one or two a month.
I haven't seen an email in a while.
So it takes a while because it also creates that what are they up to? What are they doing? And then you put an email out, and guess what everyone's gonna do? They're gonna open it and read it and read the content and use it. So that's why we do it. In May will be 8 years. I'm actually working on a big project for the diversity mixers. I haven't shared this yet, so I'm going to share it on your show because you've been here for the ride for a long time. So I've always appreciated your support, and I love the way you've grown your brand and your business.
Yes,
but we're going to have something that I tried to do right before the pandemic. I had something scheduled. It was a small business expo.
Okay.
So we had this idea of like bringing big corporations, big companies, big businesses, and introduce the procurement process on how to get them to shop and use local. And then we bring the small businesses and connect them and show them what the procurement process is. So for example, if I'm, one of these large employers, and I don't want to use their names just because we're not, I don't want, they haven't given me permission. Let's say employer A is a major employer, has 6,000 employees, one of the top 10 employers in the county, right? Because they've confirmed, and I'm not going to say names, but let's say one of the top three. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything. But there's a few major employers in our area who are very interested in this. They just don't understand who to go to. right? So they're going to say, hey, I want to market in our local community. I want to advertise. Who do I talk to? Well, there's Reading Magazine. There's a bunch of people, right, that they probably didn't know about. And if you guys get a contract like that, I'd say that's life changing, right? There's a local clothing shirt, and they print all kinds of stuff. I'm sure everyone will guess because they've also been part of this journey for almost the entire 8 years. But I remember one time linking them up to a major corporation out here, and they needed uniforms. They needed shirts for their employees.
Yeah.
They got like an order for hundreds of shirts. That was life changing. That was a life changing contract for this business, and that's the idea of this event.
Wow.
Is to procure that process, to show people how to go through the process. Because sometimes you have, if to be a vendor, for example, I'm producing a big event for Penn State Berks, where on the DJ side, where we're bringing.
We didn't even talk about
we haven't even done that yet. I told you I had a lot. We could talk all day, but for example, like I have to be a vendor for that organization for Penn State Berks, right, or for Penn State, just Maine.
Yeah.
So I have to go through a process. I had to go through an application and a ton of questions and a whole list of things, and then I become a vendor. But now guess who they go to every time they have an event, a production, or any kind of need that requires music, the sound equipment or DJing or production. Who do they go to? The vendor with one employee who those are life-changing contracts. Like it's not just a mortgage payment, it's like 6 mortgage payments or whatever that may be, for whoever's doing that. You
still have to go through that process.
You still got to go through a process, and I didn't know how to do that.
Right.
Luckily, I had people there that helped me walk through it, and now I think I've signed up like 10 new vendors for Penn State Berks, all minority-owned businesses and artists for this specific event that's coming April 29th. It's Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges. So it's a great event. Yeah, if you remember that one, we're bringing it back, and it's just an awesome event. It's going to be a day to showcase local. It's all local talent, and it features singers, dance groups, spoken word, poetry. We have our poet laureate here and former poet laureate, so they're all going to be part of this, and it's such a diverse group of people. We even have the Reading High dance team. I mean, it's an opportunity for people to showcase their skills on a platform that maybe they've never had. Like I have a singer who's never actually done anything on a stage in front of a major audience, right? So like that's life changing, and that's what I'm into, man. If I can help get you there, we're gonna get there, and that's what the brand is all about. So the Diversity Mixers and Red Tie Affairs, which is my other business. I guess we can jump into that if you'd like at some point, right? But yeah, so Red Tie Affairs is where it all started. That was the business I officially started.
There's just so many businesses.
Yeah,
You've done.
yeah. So the Diversity Mixer brand was just, that was just something that came about, but it was under the Red Tie Affairs umbrella, which many people didn't even know about until just recently when I started talking about it. Because now I focus my time 100% to Diversity Mixers, which is not only just a networking group, by the way. It's the consulting services, diversity inclusion, consulting, business services like mentoring, business planning, financial packaging. If you need access to XYZ or you need a resource, I will be your link to that, or your project manager for that. So I do a little bit of nonprofit board training because I've been able to learn a ton of that, and I still do it for some local organizations, and just being as involved as I was. Going back to that same scenario where I just didn't know what I was doing. What do I do to learn and figure it out? Well, that's what happened to me when I started volunteering. I was on a nonprofit board many, many years back in Lancaster, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just sitting there, and I wasn't an efficient board member or an effective board member. I would just sit there and say yes because I saw everyone else who was older than me, smarter than me, at the time what I thought, more degrees, more titles. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, yes, I'll do, whatever you say.
What can you put in here? Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and it was a respect thing as well. Culturally, you don't speak up to people that are older than you. You don't interject. You don't question or challenge. But now I teach the exact opposite. So yeah, it's good to have some conversation. It's good to have debates. It's good to question, especially in these areas where a majority of the nonprofits are serving black and brown folks, but yet there's about a 4 or 5% representation of us on their boards. I have a major problem with that, and I've been calling people out on that forever. And things are getting better, but we still need a lot more room. We still have a lot more room to grow. So I help people with that, and then I help boards understand how their procedures work. Sometimes they don't understand how their bylaws work. So it's a little bit of all of that under one umbrella. What I've done was I said, okay, yeah, there's many skills and individual skills that I've been able to learn and pick up and get pretty good at, I would say. And now I'm offering it all under one. Like I've been able to have a ton of experiences out there through some negative experience as well. Right. I've learned from that. I've stumbled a few times, but as long as you don't keep repeating it, you'll be all right. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All those experiences have been built to each other's.
Really. And that's exactly it. You pass that on, especially to people that put themselves in a situation where they're like, I don't know how to do that. Or I don't want to learn how to do that. I don't even know where to start. Well, let me show you. Let me guide you. And good luck and much success to you. And that's the whole brand.
So what advice do you give to business owners that are just starting or are trying to find their way really?
It's tough because what I've noticed in the many years that I did small business work for an actual organization, I noticed a few patterns. One is hardly anyone ever has a business plan. Like 98% of the clients I've had, and I've had hundreds, no one ever had a solid business plan. It's always been something. It's either they have nothing at all.
Business plan. You're talking the
actual idea on paper. Okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Because if you're able to translate what you're trying to do in here on a piece of paper, then you have a clear vision. And then your mission becomes, let me accomplish these goals. Let me accomplish what I have on this paper. Because when you're an entrepreneur, as you know, you have to put on many hats.
Yes.
Many hats that you never knew you would have to wear.
Yes.
And then you also have to find revenue streams, right? So if you see an opportunity here, you're going to jump that way. But then your mission was leading you this way. And it's just, that's just the nature of the beast, right? Yeah. So I think organizing your thoughts, organizing yourself, and this is coming from someone who's not a good person to organize. I struggle with that myself. I follow a regimen of rules that I have to put down. Like, okay, if I want to do this, let's write this down. Let's put it on paper. Let's put the concept on paper. Let's understand what it is. And let's look at the outcomes that could happen. Let's look at the negative outcomes that could happen and analyze. A lot of people don't do that. What I notice is people will say, oh, well, Jason, you make a great pizza. Okay, now you're going to open a pizza shop.
Yeah,
that's exactly how people open their businesses.
Yeah, I've seen many people do
huge majority. But then a year or two later, oh, that pizza shop was so great, but they shut down. Well, then I find out Jason had no accounting experience, didn't have proper insurance, got himself into a major loan to renovate a building that doesn't belong to him, and now he's got to pay it. These are all real issues.
Yeah.
And majority of the clients I've had have gone through this.
They're expanding into, more than they can,
They chew on more than they can eat. So, it's just a cycle that happens, and it's a common thing, unfortunately. So it's trying to just help people understand, like, put yourself on paper.
Yeah,
plan it out.
And having a strategy.
Plan it out. Have a strategy. Yeah. Give yourself a marketing budget. Marketing is more important than people think.
Yes.
And use resources like Reading Magazine and Hug Media to use that to expose your business. You need people in your doors. You need people using your service. You need people buying your product. You got to put it out there. You can't just open shop and say, okay, let's wait for people to come in.
Yeah.
No, doesn't work that way. And that's how many people run their business.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's important to run a real business plan, budget for it, save for it, and have money to go to. Like, have enough money to survive for, a year. without having to get loans or have to access money that doesn't belong to you. Like, you got to put some skin in the game. So like, put some reserves, build that up, and then get into it. Don't just jump into something. Use local resources. We have the SBDC. We have local resources that help. Penn State has a great group over there with the launch box. You know, there's lots of great organizations. We have SCORE. We have many. If you don't want to pay for services for a consultant like myself or someone else, there are others out there. I get it. There's just not a budget for it. And I'm not for everyone, just like you're not for everyone, right? But use those resources, build a plan, get it out there, you know, iron it out. So that's what I would say to businesses. Just plan your ideas. Don't just jump into something because you make a great pizza or whatever that may be. And we don't need any more barbershops and pizza shops. I'm just saying that as a joke, because it's like one of the major groups of businesses that we see with minority entrepreneurs is barbershops, restaurants, and grocery stores.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we don't need any more right now. So that's what I would offer to people out there who are trying to open a business.
What's the future look like? What do you have in the works?
Dude, there's so much out there right now. You know, I'm
you
100%
talked about your expo coming
100% on my own. So it's, you know, now it's a little different. Like something was telling me for a while, like,
how was that?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that when I saw you.
We talked about it a few times already. You know, it's hard because I was used to the steady paycheck, right? And there's nothing like having insurance and steady paycheck, and it's predictable.
Right.
It's very predictable versus, you know, you could see through 2 or 3 weeks and you don't have $1 coming in, but then all of a sudden things come in from other projects you've worked on.
It is a roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster. So you have to learn how to be very disciplined financially and mentally, because you got to know, like, there's going to be ups and downs. Many entrepreneurs know this. But yeah, if you don't work, you don't eat. And that's just what it comes down to. So it's been an interesting ride, but something was telling me that it was time. The DJ business has grown enough where I now have someone helping me.
How do you determine that?
Yeah, it's
when it's time to do that.
Exactly.
I would say it's a lot of either if you're an entrepreneur or even someone who's still working part-time or something like that.
It's hard, man.
What's your perspective on that?
You know, like,
different things.
I was just ready. I just... You know, it's not that I hate working for someone, because I do hear that a lot. That's like the most common thing I hear with entrepreneurs. Like, I hate working for someone, or I hate someone telling me what to do. That's not what it is. I don't hate people telling me what to do or you know, being in a work environment. I just wanted a little more freedom, a little more creativity freedom, an opportunity to do things how I've experienced them and maybe try it this way. Because sometimes in the corporate environment, it's like standard procedure, right? Standard operating procedures. This is what you do. You go 1, 2, 3. You can't go 1, 2, 10. It's 1, 2, 3, and you follow the line, and this is how you do it. And if you provide some new ideas or different perspective, or a young perspective, or a perspective from different cultures, sometimes people don't accept it, or they don't want to try it because they're comfortable where they're at.
Right.
So that can get very taxing on people that have their creativity going and moving. So, you know, for me, it was a mixture of all of that. You know, the pandemic was a huge blessing for me. I know it's kind of crazy and it was unfortunate for many people. I've lost many people. I've lost 4 loved ones to COVID. You know, we've experienced a ton of loss in our family. And unfortunately, you know, there's that side of it. But the other side was it pulled my brakes completely. I was spreading myself out too thin. I was working my job, running the business on like 9 nonprofit boards.
Oh, wow.
I was coaching because I coach youth sports. You know, I was out there way too much. And the one thing I didn't focus on was my family.
Okay.
And my children. You know, I'm out there coaching all these kids and being a mentor to them and talking about how they need someone in their life. I'm here for them. But yet my own children were like there and I wasn't there. So that was a huge wake up call for me. And that's why I say it was a blessing. I got to spend some time with my family, everyone. And I got to have a new appreciation and understanding for what family and unity is like. So I also wanted to have the freedom and like you told me today, hey, we're going to meet at 10 o'clock. Okay. That's cool. I don't have anything. I don't have anything that I have to be at, my 9 to 5 or an 8 to 5 or whatever it is. 10 o'clock, that's my appointment. And then I build my day from there. And if I want to stop and take a 2-hour lunch break and build a great relationship with someone for lunch or whatever it is, I don't have anyone coming down my throat and saying, hey, why are you not doing this? Or why are you taking an hour longer? This is little things. Different. Yeah, every day is a little different for sure. I mean, there are some days where I love it. Like, let's say one day I have a lot of contracts that I booked for the DJ side. So yesterday was one of those. I was excited. I booked a few contracts, corporate gig. So that's great. We don't get paid right now, but at least they're booked. I sent out the contracts and we're ready to roll. So like today I'm going to take it a little easier, right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab some lunch with a former colleague, and take it easy. And then tomorrow we go back to the grind and we keep going and follow up and build those relationships and those opportunities. So yeah, I like that freedom. I also like it where my kid, one of them had a dentist appointment. Like we don't have to worry about that. Or like my family, my father is going through some health issues. We have to go to the doctor 2 or 3 times a week. I'm there. I'm able to take him. I'm able to have that flexibility where I don't have to ask for special permission or family medical leave. I can take the time.
Right. And you can build your schedule around
exactly.
It too. Yeah.
And then so like, he's got an hour chemo appointment or 3-hour appointment. That's what they end up being. I'll hang with him or I'll drop him off and then I'll do some work and then whatever I don't do I can get to at night or like I always stay up late. I'm not a morning person. So like last night at midnight I sent my last contract out.
Okay.
But that's my time, right? Like I was able to do that. By the way, I was also playing video games. So that's the other freedom, right? Like I'm sitting there, I have a nice setup. I got 3 screens at my desk, right? My laptop, my workstation, and then a video game screen. So I'm sitting there playing video games, and then in between matches or whatever I'm doing, okay, let's pump away this contract. And I love that.
I didn't know what you were going to say, but I did not.
Yeah. I love video games, man. That's one thing. When the pandemic started, so I used to play video games like back in the day. I loved it. It was fun. It was just a great way to escape the world. What
kind of games?
So I'm a bit. Call of Duty Warzone is my favorite. That's the game I go to. I'm unfortunately way too much. Not as much as it used to be because during the pandemic we had nothing to do. So that's what I did. Like my 2 sons and I would literally team up and play together. It was the most fun we've ever had. Obviously things are a little more back to normal, so it's harder because now I gotta actually, we gotta do some work, right? so that's the freedom of entrepreneurship that I love and enjoy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. So yeah.
Wow.
And I also have this little thing called Red Tie Affairs. So DJ, entertainment, production, event planning. We do all that as well. So yeah. Any corporate gigs out there, we got it covered. We offer DJ, photo booth, bilingual, bicultural. Working on some other things to offer. I can't reveal those yet, but maybe I'll have to reveal it with you and I'll tell your audience what we have. We have some really cool things coming that are not being done in this area, that as far as entertainment and just things to add on to your events. So yeah.
Wow.
Pretty cool stuff.
That's a lot.
I know, man. I'm telling you that
you've done a lot.
We can go on all day about this. We could talk all day long, but
from, barbershop to financial, finance.
I know.
And then back into
with no college degree, by the way. Right. This is the big thing that I do have an associate now in business. That I got as an adult while I was managing Wells Fargo, one of the banks that I've worked at. I actually started it. I was going part-time, and at that time it was, my son's 14 now. He was about 4 years old, and I was going to school as well as management team at a bank, and that was tough, dude. Like, that was very hard, but I did it as an adult.
Yeah, it must be different going.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
If anyone's out there listening, if they take anything out of this, like get your schooling and get all that stuff done before you have a family and children and other priorities. Like it was very difficult. Like I remember I would take 2 or 3 classes per semester to try and get it out of the way, but it became too much. And I remember one day on a Sunday, because Sunday was my homework day, because I had to work 60 hours a week.
Right.
I was working all day long, tons of homework, tons of stuff, and my kid was making noise. He was probably like 4 years old, if that. I don't know. He was just barely talking, and he was running around making noise, and I was so used to it that it was just like normal. He would jump on my back. He would just do whatever, and the poor guy was just trying to get my attention, and I didn't see it at the time. So I turned around, and he kept talking and interrupting, and I was working. And it came to a point where I like lashed out on him. I'm like, stop it. I'm working. Leave me alone. And he looked at me. He goes, Daddy, you never play with me anymore. And that's when I literally I was with my laptop and books all over the coffee table. I closed it. I put all the books and threw them to the side. And it was literally the first week of that particular semester, or no, maybe second week, whatever it was, wherever the deadline is that they don't give you your money back. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. And they're like, you sure you're not going to get your money back? I don't care. So I stopped for a little while. And then I was fortunate enough. I got laid off of a job, and then I focused right on it, did my classes, and was able to get my associate. I think I was about 29, maybe. Okay. I was almost 30. And yeah, dude, it was tough. Yeah. But my 2 kids, who were now a little older at the time, I think one was maybe like 9 and the other was maybe like 6 or 7. They watched me walk down and and graduate from with my associate. So I was hoping, that was, I hope, some kind of motivation or inspiration for them. But yeah, it's not easy. Yeah. So yeah, get it out there and work hard. You'll get there. You just gotta you gotta be willing to do a lot more than the person next to you, behind you, in front of you, and that's what it comes down to. So you got to be willing to do a lot more than anyone else. That's why the elite athletes are where they're at. I'd use a lot of sports references because play sports and I coach. They're the ones that put in the hard work. They're the first ones in, last one out. And they're doing things behind the scenes that nobody knows. And they're working on their craft. Yeah. Yep. So see it. Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah. So that's just, I hope that's a gem for people out there listening. So. Yeah,
Jobany, thank you for being.
Yeah, no, I loved it. Thank you for having me. I hope I was able to provide some good stuff for your audience.
Oh, and definitely.
Yeah, if anybody ever needs anything, reach out.
That's right. How can they reach out to you?
Just go to we have our website, redtieaffairs.com, or just email jobany.bedoya@gmail. jobany.bedoya@gmail. So
and the diversity mixers.
Yep, that just contact me through there. Okay. I have one communication channel for that, and then everything else kind of like goes in its bucket. So
sounds good.
Yeah, I keep track of everything. Right, there's so much going on, but I love it. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us today for another Reading Magazine live podcast. And also thank you to our sponsors, which are Kids Peace Foster Care and Community Programs, the Kutztown Folk Festival, and Ken Millman is a personal injury lawyer here in Wyomissing. Thank you for joining us.